This yarn that you see here is doing several things at once. There's sparkle, there's eyelash, there's texture that suggests it has lived a full and interesting life before it even arrived in your stash. The question here isn't what can I knit with this yarn? The question is what kinds of projects will let this yarn exist without turning the whole situation into a negotiation. Hi, my name is Taylor, and today we are doing another installment in the What Should I Knit With This series that's kind of ever going on this channel here. This is using a viewer submitted yarn that I do not own, I don't have in my presence, I've never touched this yarn before. We are judging entirely based on photos and vibes alone. The photos of this yarn and the email that went with it were sent in by a viewer who received this as a Christmas gift from her brother. She has 3 hanks already caked and she's completely stumped, which makes perfect sense because this is novelty yarn, and novelty yarn comes with rules, not written rules, emotional ones. So today, the goal is not to tell her exactly what I think she should knit with this yarn, but rather to help her understand how to think about approaching a project with yarn like this, so that she can make a decision that actually feels good instead of forced. Okay, before we get any further, I want to share her email with you so you can see exactly what she's working with and where she's coming from. Okay, for Christmas, I got a very unique yarn from my brother. Totally stumped what to make with it. It's Ironstone Pizzazz yarn, 3 hanks that I got already caked up. Any help would be greatly appreciated. Okay, again, everything that I'm about to share and everything I'm about to say is based on photos that were provided to me in this email. I don't have the yarn in my possession. But from the label and the images, here's what we know. This yarn is made up of multiple strands. There's a base strand, an eyelash component, and sparkle running through the whole thing. It's chunky, airy, and extremely texture forward. The gauge is very open, the yardage per hank is relatively low, and stitch definition is not going to be part of the conversation. This is a yarn that does the talking for you, which is great unless you ask it to do too much. When you're trying to decide what to make with a yarn like this, the most important thing to ask yourself is not what you want to make with this yarn. It's what this yarn will tolerate. This yarn does not want complexity. It does not want precision. It does not want to be corrected repeatedly. If you find yourself thinking, well, maybe if I just know, that's the moment to stop. When I search on Ravelry, or if anybody were to search on Ravelry with yarn like this in mind, in their possession and ready to be worked up, the goal should be to limit the universe as quickly as possible. I am not browsing, I am protecting my peace. The first thing I'm going to do is remove garments from the conversation. This is me personally. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there who want garments in this yarn. I'm going off of my own vibes here. I mean, honestly, live your best life. Not because garments are bad, but because this yarn does not want that responsibility. I'm looking under accessories, home decor. Then I filter it for super bulky or bulky, even if the yarn isn't technically labeled that way, and here's why. That gauge at 2 stitches per 1 inch on a size 17 needle, that's super bulky behavior, and you need to take that into consideration when you're trying to find patterns that go along with this gauge and fabric characteristic. I keep the yardage requirements low, under 400 yards, because that's what the label says we have at the max. I look for patterns with minimal shaping, simple geometry, squares, rectangles, tubes, and I actively avoid keywords like lace, cables, fitted, elegant. If the pattern description talks about beautiful stitch definition, this yarn has already left the room. Home decor is where novelty yarns like this stop apologizing. Pillows are an especially good option because they don't care about drape, wear, or texture, and they can be used as accents, and something funky like this would be a really awesome accent in any room. In something like a pillow, texture reads as intentional. Unevenness reads as design. Graphic pillows also work well here, especially ones that are already designed for novelty or sparkly yarn. You should also consider sticking with really simple accessories. I like accessories for yarn like this because accessories are a great way to add a pop of character and vibrance, and maybe even a little splash of the avant-garde to a really relatively neutral outfit. Cowls are a fantastic, strong option for yarn like this. Not shaped cowls, not fancy cowls, just big, uncomplicated tubes. The kind of pattern that gives the yarn a container and then just steps away. A super bulky cowl knit in the round is incredibly forgiving, and it lets the yarn be bold without needing to behave, which this yarn is not want to do. Now, I wouldn't really say stick to something structured, but hear me out on this one. Bags, especially ones that are made up primarily of rectangles, are a really great place to play with yarn like this. A bag can be an awesome statement piece to add to an outfit, to accessorize something that's otherwise more minimal. Bags are a quieter win than people really expect. Garter stitch, simple construction, and ideally a lining. And you can also figure out ways that you can pair this yarn with another super bulky yarn, so this almost works as a little bit of an accent in the fabric and not the main player. However, I think a bag completely knit in this fun, funky eyelash yarn could be a lot of fun. Now, I think the key ideas here are to keep it simple, avoid complexity, don't waste your time on precision. But let's talk about what kinds of things you might want to avoid with a yarn like this. Category 1 is lace shawls. Lace requires clarity. This yarn offers mystery. When you knit it together, all the little individual stitches are going to be completely obscured by this like eyelash pizzazz going on, and that's by design. It's not intended to be used to showcase stitch definition, so anything lace is out of the question. The next are fitted garments. Anything that relies on shaping, clean edges, or predictable fabric behavior is going to feel like a fight. Now, the next one goes without saying, I've already gently mentioned it, but stitch pattern dependent designs. If the entire point of the pattern is to showcase the stitch pattern and the yarn obscures any stitch pattern, that's not a quality partnership. That's sabotage. Now, for this particular knitter, with 3 hanks of this really lovely, beautiful, very self-aware eyelash yarn, the best outcome is not squeezing every inch into one project, in my opinion. You can, and maybe that's one big, exciting cowl with all of this yarn, but maybe it's 1 or 2 pillows that have an accompanying yarn to go with it, or a really adorable bag where this yarn is kind of a little bit of a pizzazz in the overall design. Maybe it's all of these things, and this yarn is spread and divided between these things as little accent notes. There is no moral victory in forcing this yarn to become something it isn't. So have fun dabbling in various different things, or if you feel like just going big and making a really fantastic rectangular shaped bag with this yarn as the overall star, go for it, because honestly, I feel like that's the project I'm rooting for most. But let the yarn work for you. Let this yarn do exactly what this yarn is intended to do. Some yarns exist to be a moment, to be fun, to be a little unhinged. And remember, sometimes the answer isn't just a list of pattern ideas. It's perspective on what that yarn wants to be when it grows up. So for everybody else, if you have a yarn sitting in your stash that you don't hate, but you just simply don't quite understand what to do with it, you're not alone. And if you ever want a second set of eyes on something like that, this is exactly the kind of conversation that this series is for. Shoot me an email. Let me see the photos. Thank you guys for hanging out with me, and thank you to the person who sent in this email. This was a lot of fun. This actually came in relatively recently, and it stopped me in my tracks because that yarn is just so much fun, and I wanted to dive into that because I know that it's one of those yarns that some of us just kind of have sleeping in our stash. And what do you do with something like that when you're so used to working with something much more, dare I say, practical? Well, just because it's not practical doesn't mean it's not perfectly suited for something for us, and I liked diving into this today. I wanted to keep it simple. I wanted to keep it straightforward because I feel like that's what you need with a yarn just like that. All right, guys, this was so much fun. Thank you for hanging out. I will catch you guys in the next one, and don't forget to head over to Patreon where there is additional content, and the Wool Needles Hands Year of Hats knit along is happening over there as well. All right, guys, happy knitting, happy making, happy whatever it is that you're doing. Take care, be well, and I will see you soon. Bye.